Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Just hit that live button, Cindy. Oh my goodness, I was procrastinating in coming into my podcast tonight. I sometimes, every day, I'm thinking, what's going to be the topic of conversation tonight? Because the topic of conversation during the course of my day is usually so, well, not just all over the place, but really, really deep, really heavy, and not content that I really want or I think is it suitable? It's much needed. For sure it's much needed, but I don't think it's very understood by the majority. And if you guys know anything about me, I run with majority. No matter what. I believe that this world is moving forward and the decisions for the world are based on the majority, not just on one person. Donald Trump says this is what's happening, right? It's just not in one person, it is in the majority. And I understand, right, also that it's the minority that's going to hold the majority accountable for sure. So I don't worry so much about the headline news, the hairy, scary sometimes that are going on in the world. And there's a lot of it, right? And every once in a while, when it comes into across my path, I understand when things come across my path, it's for me to go take a look, to do a little bit of reflection on it, to see if there's something that, knowing that I'm not the majority, but possibly, working in this world of influence, that maybe I can contribute something to that conversation, or at the very most, a reflection of my own opinion so that I can be aware, right? Without having my fingers in absolutely everything. Because, I do believe the majority is going to be controlled, right, by the minority. Lots of people make bad decisions. You know, in when I was growing up, our household was basically run on majority. There was my mom and my dad and the four girls. And, when there were decisions to be made about what we were going to do on our Sunday drive, or if there was going to be adventure or some traveling going on, even in, the television shows or the movies we were going to watch, it was always run on majority. Now, it wasn't always fair. We knew if my dad had the last say, that he would swing the vote where he wanted it to go. Sometimes he would go first in putting in the vote to let us all know where he would like it to go. The only way and the only time that the majority did not rule in some of those decisions, it was like hockey night in Canada, because he was the only male in the household, right? For the most part, us girls, my mom, we would be happy to watch Little House on the Prairie and the Waltons, right? My dad was all about documentaries and sports and oh, things of interest. He liked thought leadership. He liked watching political campaigns. He was a lover of, or a groupie even, right? He was a big fan of Pierre Trudeau, not Justin Trudeau, but Pierre Trudeau. He really, really admired him. And it was a way to keep the peace in the family, right? If my vote didn't swing with the majority, which it very rarely did, once in a while I would get the last vote, but for the most part, I just kind of moved with everybody else's movement. And for the most part, that was the safe way to go about it. I knew there would be, I don't know, something to pay by if I didn't vote in the direction that other people wanted to vote in. Sometimes it was in that wanting to have a nice evening if we were watching a show. Sometimes it was in, knowing that somebody was going to be super happy and calm and right. There would be less distraction and less consequence if we voted a certain way. And right, that's the influence, that's the manipulation sometimes. And lots of that wasn't even a spoken word. It was just something that it was understood, right? And, for the majority, right? For lots of us, we don't get a say. We don't get a say at all, right? But in the consequences of the decision made by the majority, the minority does have a say. In the very least, they can say, I told you so, right? I told you I would never try something like that. But, it's the truth. And lots of people, that's their game. That's what they're good at, in calling people out in what they get wrong. And for myself, I was never really that person, For the most part, I would just quietly get up and walk away, no notice in what I was doing. The least amount of consequences, the better. Lots of times there wouldn't be any notice at all, right? Because I wouldn't want somebody to talk me into staying or talk me into a bad decision, like crossing my own boundaries or making me do something that I didn't want to do. Especially when I was a young adult, I had a lot of friends who were, we're just going to call it mischievous, right? Because young adults do silly things. They do what they want to do without reflecting on the consequences of others. And because I was the person that I was, I never really wanted to run that way. I wasn't brave. Maybe I was a little bit afraid of getting caught, probably a lot about getting caught because I had an idea of how I wanted people to think about me, right? That I was a good person. I always struggled, right, with people's impressions of me, and I didn't want to give any fuel or any firewood to that wood stove, right? That somebody might be able to hold something over on me, right? Me growing up, there was a lot of that bribery and blackmail and consequence. And not just for me, but for friends. And it was just some, and it's very prevalent in this day and age too. It's why people have to put up boundaries, and we have to, right, stick to them. Otherwise we can so easily be persuaded or manipulated or threatened into doing things that we don't want to do, that just goes against our grain. And I'm grateful I had a lot of that mentality already set in place when I woke up to some of these ideas. It made the process a little bit easier. It made it so that I kind of had an idea of what I was going to need to do, right, in the process in order to make it as smooth for myself as I possibly could. Well, in all reality, to make it as fun for myself as I possibly could, because I didn't really understand how deep it was, how important it was, right? How relevant to my, not just my life, but my family's life, and as of recently, possibly to the understandings of a world that does run with majority. I see you there, Eugene. Thank you so much for popping into my life. I'm doing really good tonight. I hope you're doing really good too. Tonight, I said, I'm just going to come in. It has been one of those days. I woke up this morning. Well, I didn't wake up this morning in all honesty. I woke up late. I didn't even hear my alarm go off this morning. I got up, went to the washroom, got a little bit of something to drink, and I crawled right back into bed. And I did not get out of bed until noon or just after noon. It was something I have not done seriously in years. But if you were in my live show yesterday, Eugene was in my live show yesterday, right? I walked 7 kilometers yesterday in total. And I went to an Olympic size swimming pool and did 40 laps. I was pretty sure it was at least 40 laps of the pool, not lengthwise, but widthwise. But that was a lot. I was feeling the tingling in my hands. Um, my feet were pretty good, right? But I wasn't doing too much pedaling, but I was really giving her with my arms, and I did laps, and I did not really rest. And if I did rest in those laps, it was just kind of like holding on the edge, and then that's when I would kick my legs. And then after that, right, I had a dentist appointment, one more dentist appointment on Friday, and then I am done. I am done for my whole lifetime if I have any say in that, right? But I'm not a big fan of dentists, but I don't know really who is a big fan in that. And it wasn't like I have anxiety. Anxiety isn't really something that I struggle with. I do struggle with worry quite often, right? Whether it's financial or about my family, or like today, even in that recognition. And I've recognized it for a very, very long time because I've been doing this for a while now, but recognizing how important and how deep I'm allowing myself to be pulled in to understanding of our movement, not just my movement, but in the movement of wherever this world is heading towards, right? But I felt it when I got up. Hello, Dave. Hello. Thank you so much for popping into my life. I hope I'm not keeping you up too late. I was procrastinating as usual in coming into my life, but it was a little bit different today. I really slept in, and I haven't done that in years. I'm pretty religious at getting up at 7:30 or shortly after 7:30 in the morning, and I've been doing that for years and years and years. And I'm so grateful to have been able to switch over into some really good sleeping habits. But I really gave her yesterday in that exercising, right? I went for 2 long walks. I did 40 laps in a Olympic swimming pool. Went to the dentist. Oh my goodness. And I have no idea why I walked home, right? Because usually I only walk home one way, or I walk one way, whether I'm walking home or walking to my destination, but it was that fresh air. It was a beautiful day, and it's a great way for contemplating, and it's a great way for me to go up back alleys and stuff looking for my rhubarb. And I found some, you guys. Today I meant to actually go out and take a pair of scissors and go and get that rhubarb. It was in a lane. I would never go into anybody's yards or anything like that. It was in the back alley. But right, I've been waiting to come across some back alley rhubarb for a very long time, uh, probably a whole month now. Ever since my niece gave me some rhubarb out of her backyard, and I've been looking for it ever since. So I was going to do that today, but I couldn't even leave the house today. I was in it for sure, and and I couldn't understand why I really couldn't get my life together today, right? But you know what? It is what it is. And I understand that things come into my life for a reason. I ride those waves for the very best that I possibly can, right? If it works out for me, it works out for me. And if it doesn't work out for me, I have to accept that too, right? Because I don't always, right? Like the majority, I don't always get a say in things. I don't always get a say in I'm going to have the most amazing day, or I'm going to get lots of exercise today, or I'm going to, right, make an amazing new relationship today, or, I'm going to connect with friends and family. And it was strange there too, because usually I'm chasing them down. And right, people were connecting with me today. Just short conversations. But when I was in the state that I was, I was trying to make the conversations uh, short, right? Because, well, it's not that I mind that people can recognize that I'm kind of spacey, because this is what happens to me when I go deep into it. I get a little spacey and I don't feel like myself. And also, I can feel exhausted, right? Because lots of things take energy out of us, right? And if I want the answers, if I want to be in that contemplation, if I want to dig deep, I got to understand that, right? It's going to be taking a little bit of energy. It just doesn't always come for free. And that's the truth, right? So, um, grateful that I got some good sleep yesterday. I think in total, I must have gotten pretty close to 11 or 12 hours sleep. But right, I am optimistic that I'm going to be up with my alarm tomorrow for sure, and not stay in bed so late. Every once in a while, that's perfectly fine. But when it's not the norm, it's something that I have to take note of. Okay, love the pics in the wall behind you. Oh, thank you, Dave. This is Bierstadt. These He was a famous painter in the early 1800s. He actually traveled with Lewis and Clark, and he would sketch, and then he would go home to Germany and he would paint these big landscapes. In actuality, you heard that term, starving artists, right? He was an entrepreneur, and he was a painter who actually did very, very well in his own lifetime, right? Not like uh, um, Vincent van Gogh and Monet and some of these big important artists that become important and big after they passed away, because we all know Van Gogh struggled, right? He was able to hang out, and he was recognized as a great painter, but he still struggled, and he didn't really become famous until after he passed away. And I think it was that stereotyping because he had a lot of issues too. But Bierstadt did very well. He made lots of money, but other painters and other artists, they kind of picked on him because of it, because, they're struggling. And when somebody's not doing as well as you, quite often they'll bring you down to their levels. And so that's what they tried to do with him, because his art was so extravagant. They thought there can't possibly be places in the world that are like that. I think the top painting is actually a waterfall in Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone, I think so. Oh no, sorry, Yosemite. Yosemite. I maybe that is in Yellowstone. I don't know. Yosemite Park, and the bottom one is from the Pacific West Coast, and it's a Haida village in on the West Coast and the Northwest Coast. But yeah, when I found those, I worked at a thrift store. They're worth between $500 and $1,500 each. When I got them, the frames on them were so yellow, they were almost brown from nicotine stains. And it took me 3 hours to scrub with a scouring pad and heavy soap and Sanafoam, everything I possibly could think of. Took me 3 hours to get one frame done. By the time I started the second one, kind of found my groove on it. It only took me about an hour. So I had about 4 hours of investment in cleaning them, and I got them both as a pair for $12.50. I might have even gotten a discount, staff discount on them. So let's just say I got them both for $10. And they're worth between $500 and $1,500, because I'm saying that because it's the value is in the person who appreciates them, right? So thank you for appreciating them, Dave. Yeah, he actually was discredited by the people who made him a master. He was I guess you have to go through a voting process by experts, and he became a master in his own lifetime, and they took it away from him. They took it away from him. After he passed away, they took it away from him. So for his whole life, he was considered a master. But when he passed away, those other artists, right, they grumbled and complained, and it was taken away because they said the same scenery was just too fantastical. Well, we live in North America, and we know these landscapes are real. And yeah, I think it was um, in the 1950s. I think it was in the 1950s. He was reestablished as a master. His name was Bierstadt, and he was from Germany. The one beside it is a forest scene, and in that one, I love that one because it just looks like a forest. You know me, it looks like a forest that I could just walk into. And it even had the mist and everything behind. Like, one day I'll do a live with my phone, and then we can just walk over and we can really take a close look at that wall, because there's lots of interesting and important things behind me that are relevant in my life, and everything that is a decor item in my household has a story, and that's truth. If you can see right there, I have a bisque Napoleon there, and that is worth between well, it's worth $3,000 because the sword was broken, and in the 1800s somebody plastered and made a, a new sword. Didn't do a very good job, but over the course of the decades, Uh, right, the clay that they used to do the repair on the sword has really gone dark, and he patched up a little bit on his hat and on the back of the chair too. But if it was in perfect shape, it would be over $6,000 for sure. And it's a piece of masonry art. Actually, I can bring that over. Let me let me grab that without getting up because I'm kind of mismatched in my clothing today. Okay. And I'll show you the mark on the bottom. It's from about 18 1840, and you can see here, see the patches on his hat. We'll get really close there so you guys can see his hat, and then see the sword. See the how dark the sword is there on the bottom. And he didn't do a very good job because the sword is actually rounded and not flat and skinny. But it must have been an ornament that they were so proud of. I have not come across another one. It's a famous Napoleonic scene, and it's been replicated by lots of artists. I think there's actually a statue of this. This is actually a bisque figurine. I guess you would call it a statue, but it's so well done, right? And there's the repair on the chair. And even in this state, it's worth about $3,000. Guess how much I paid for it, Dave? I paid $1 for it because we weren't supposed to sell broken and damaged things. So my assistant manager, he knew I was in love with it. And at the time I didn't know what it was worth. It took a lot of research to find the I knew it was mason right away, but there's an S in the middle of the masonry um, mark on it, and that is not a true mason mark. It it refers to. I have a Mark's book here. It took me, oh my good, it took me so long to find who he was, but he was somebody. He was famous in his own right, but he used to do copies of famous pieces, just not Mason or something. But he was so famous because he was so good himself. He wasn't interested in using his own creativity. He just wanted to show people that he could do things just as good as they did. And yeah, I think it's from about 1840. And yeah, I love this piece. This is going to be with me for my entire life, no matter, right, if it was worth $5 or if it was worth 20,000. Well, if it was worth $20,000, then right, then it could go, right, because that would be a car for me, wouldn't it? Anner, thank you so much for popping in. Oh my goodness, I have not seen you forever. Okay, so instead of trying to put this back on the shelf properly, because right, I want to keep in good shape. I don't want to ruin it or drop it. So yeah, thank you for asking about my artwork behind me. But yeah, I love great scores, but I didn't buy them because they were scores. I had no idea how much my how much my artwork was worth. It was just in the research after I brought these things home. I have a nature wall here that is wood pieces. I have a lot of uh, Paul Perry. Is it Paul Perry? A lot of Paul Perry. He does seagulls and birds sitting on wood logs and stuff like that. I have a lot of that. I love wood carvings, things that people carve themselves. I have some walnut inkwells. I've got carved, oh my goodness, bears and oh, I've got to show you this one. This one is so amazing. So amazing. I just, oh, maybe this one too. This I thought was a porcelain piece when I first got it. Look at it. It's actually a wood carving, right? Look at it's a wood it's a wood carving and he did such an amazing job. He did such an amazing job. It's one of my favorite pieces. It actually looks real, doesn't it? And it's just a piece of wood. And these are the kind of things that I like. This one's a signed piece from Italy, and it's a swan. And this one is actually carved, I think, from bone, right? I don't know what kind of bone it's carved from, but yeah, it's another signed piece. So I get these amazing pieces. I mean, he's only worth maybe 50 or $75, right? But I don't buy these things because, right, they're worth money. I buy them because I love them, right? I love Mother Nature. I keep all the Mother Nature stuff. I have a whole wall there of Mother Nature, and most of it is wood carvings and stuff like this. Um, but this wall here, this is my crystals and my dragons and my big pictures, right? And yeah, these will stay with me forever. And again, it's not because they're worth money, right? It's the bonus. And you guys know that, if it was about the money, they would have been gone a long time ago because this would sort me out so well. But it's not about the money. This is my passion. This is what makes me smile when I'm having heavy days or taking the lessons in, or I'm worried about my family or worried about what's going on in the world, or right, we're worried even in what's going on with me, right? So these things keep me balanced, they keep me happy, and it makes the adventure, right, the movement, the experience worthwhile for sure. Let me just come in here and see what Dave was saying here. Do you still have alleys in Hamilton where they stopped? But as a kid, oh, rhubarb would grow wild in the summer. And as kids, we would yank a few stalks off and eat them on a hot summer day. I don't like them sour, right? I like to dip my rhubarb in sugar, but now I just stew them. I wash them, cut them up, and I put them in a pot and I stew them, and they're great for breakfast. I have a bowl of stewed rhubarb for breakfast, or I'll have it with ice cream. Sometimes I'll make a rhubarb cobbler, or I'll mix it with strawberries and make a pie or something. It's $5.99 a pound for rhubarb at Safeway. That's like two stalks of rhubarb. What can you make with two stalks of rhubarb except do what Dave does and just walk up and down the alleys and just eat them? For me, when I was a kid, I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. That's where I was born. We would just go up and down the back alleys, and for us, it was cherry trees, plum trees, peach trees, apple trees, and pears. And pears are my absolute favorite. I mean, not a bruised pear, but a pear so ripe and yellow that when you chomp into it, like you're just dripping absolutely everywhere. And there is nothing more amazing than a pear pie. Oh my goodness. My mother made the best pear pies. It's funny, because my mother would bake a lot, right? Because bag of flour and bag of sugar and eggs were cheap, cheap, cheap. So we lived on carbs growing up, right? Um, but she would make cakes and she would make pies. And I would go in while they were cooling down or after they were iced and they were supposed to be for like dessert or in the evening or something. I would hollow those things out. I would flip them upside down, eat everything inside of them, and then sit it back on the plate like I was I was probably 12 or 13 years old already doing this. And I would put it back on the plate like it was a hat, and it was like a hat because it would be all hollow on the inside and I would never get yelled at, right? And it was so obvious that it was me, and it was so obvious what I was doing. Like you cut it in, and all you get is white icing and coconut. That was all that was in, right? Because the cake was gone in the inside, and I could easily eat an entire cake by myself. But it was so funny. I'd do stuff like that and never get in trouble, right? Never got in trouble for what I did wrong, but I would get in trouble for everything else and everything that my sisters would do. Right? Sydney did it. But I keep in mind, like, how many times did I hollow out a cake or hollow out a pie, take the lid off the pie, take everything out from the inside and put the lid back on? Right? It's not like they weren't having a piece of pie or a piece of cake after dinner, right? It just amazes me, what I got in trouble for and what I didn't get in trouble for as a kid, right? And for me to even have the gall to think that I would get away with something like that. But I think probably it was because I never got in trouble for doing those bad things. It was really strange. I never got in trouble for those things, right? Got in trouble for lots of things I didn't do, but the things that I did, Drew, and I was a pretty good kid. Otherwise, I'd have to say, I wasn't somebody who swore or hung out with the bad crowd. I didn't hang out with anybody, in all truth, right? And I was always avoiding being in trouble. And I was working by the time I think I was 10 years old. I was babysitting, and then I became like a weekend foster parent when I was in my teenage years. By the time I was 16 years old, I was making 150 dollars a week. I know it's not a lot of money now, but in the 70s, that was a lot of money. And people my age weren't really working, right? But it was something. I was even paying rent to my parents at that age. I think I was paying them $100 a month, but I was making like $500 a month, and I was only spending it on food. I wasn't really spending it on anything else. Well, maybe for the movies and new pair of jeans every once in a while. But yeah, I was a pretty good kid. I didn't get into a lot of trouble, unlike my sisters. But the boys were always chasing my sisters around, right? All my sisters were beautiful. I was beautiful too, in my own way. But yeah, interesting that you talk about walking down the back alleys and picking the rhubarb. But yeah, I have a little patch of rhubarb that I spotted in the back alley. I was going to go by there tonight and take a bag with me and chop it all down, right? Because nobody's going to eat it. It's just going to go bad, and it's the season now. I wouldn't ever take it from somebody's yard. I did see some growing on a gentleman's carport, on the concrete, but there's cracks in the concrete, and all this rhubarb came out of it. And I don't know why they're not parking in their carport. Maybe they're parking on the front street, but I thought the next time I'm down in that area, and I'm down in that area all the time now because I go for those laps in that Olympic pool now, getting exercise, trying to get in shape, keeping limber and healthy. This is what's going on in my mind, right? So I thought, I could drum up the courage, maybe. See how I say maybe. Or catch them in their front yard as they're mowing the grass or something. Maybe they are sitting out on their porch. I'll go out because I'm in the back alley. I could go around to the front of the building and just say, "Hey, are you going to eat that rhubarb that's growing out of the cracks in your carport concrete?" And I'm sure they're not going to. I mean, it's ripe and ready to go, and they haven't touched it yet. But it's just a matter of me getting that bravery to go and knock on somebody's door. I probably won't knock on anybody's door, and that's the truth. That's why I'm looking for the rhubarb in the back alley so I don't have to ask anybody. Yeah, but I did find some not too far from where I live right now. But yeah, nice of you to come in tonight, Hannah. I haven't seen you for a long time. The last time you were in, I didn't notice you were in my live show until after the end of my live show. I went, "Oh my goodness, there's Hannah." And by that time, my live show was over. I do remember starving artists back in the 80s. We bought quite a few of their traveling shows, real oil paintings. Yeah, very nice to see you too, Hannah. Very nice to see you too. It's been a long time. Um, yeah, we lived in Vancouver, and Stanley Park had those areas where all the painters would sit, and they'd have all their oil paintings on little stands where you could buy them. My dad loved that. He bought a few paintings. Uh, I had possession of one of them, but I remembered one year I didn't have a present for my sister, so I gave her that one painting. It was a great big old, one of those big ships with the sails and stuff. And yeah, I gave it to her. It was all done in the 70s colors. In the 70s, it was all orange and browns and colors like that. But yeah, I remember I used to love just walking around in the park and looking at all the artists' work and looking to see what they're working on and their techniques and stuff. It was like that artist Bob, Bob. I lost his. I forget his last. I forget his last name. I forget his last name. But yeah, I enjoy it. You bring back memories of those teenage years. I go back there quite often, but I'm not usually looking at uh, the fun of it. I'm looking and delving into the experiences and the emotions and the problems in our family and looking at the sources of that. So it's really nice to go back and remember all some of those really good times, right? Walking along the train tracks, picking blackberries along the train tracks. We'd have to take cardboard because the thorns on the blackberry bushes would just scratch you up. Oh my goodness. Oh, but I loved blackberries. Even as adult, blackberry jam is it my favorite jam? Yeah, it is. I like lemon spread too. I like lemon spread too. But yeah, blackberry jam is my absolute favorite. I haven't had jam for a long time. I went back to eliminating some of my favorite foods because I ate too much of it. Like I gave up the peanut butter again. I gave up bread again. I gave up the jam. I don't do any dairy products anymore. Not Oh no, that's not true. true. I do cheese and sour cream still, but I don't do the ice cream. It's been a long time. I haven't had any ice cream all summer long. I haven't had any ice cream because these things just sit on my hips, right? And it's not about losing weight, but for my feet, and I want to be somebody who wants to be walking around and riding my bike and stuff when I'm 80, 90 years old, that I have to keep that weight off because it's not good when you become more mature. And I'm very grateful for my good health because in my family there's all kinds of stuff going on. My sister's going in for quadruple heart bypass. It's so scary, right? We're going to be at the hospital all day. She's had that operation canceled on her twice. They wouldn't do it to her again. She even told the surgeon, I can't take it. The anxiety is too much. Now, if you want to talk about anxiety, right? I understand it just because of what my sister's going through with that. And she told her surgeon, I just can't take it, because she has to come off her heart medicine every time they tell her that she's got a date for the operation. And then when they cancel on her, she has to go back on the medication while she's waiting to find out when the operation's going to be. And this time they said they're not going to cancel on her. So this Monday, it's a biggie, you guys, right? And it's very scary for her because it's the same operation. My dad didn't have quadruple. He had the ones in his neck done. So he had a singular bypass, but he not in his heart, but in the arteries going up to his neck. They thought he was going to have a stroke because he was going blind in his eyesight, and that was something his surgeons and doctors told him to keep an eye out. If that happens, get yourself to the emergency room right away if you have those blind spells in your eyes, because that means you're going to have a stroke. And yeah, he went blind, and he had to have some emergency surgery. It's funny because even in that surgery, it was majority rules. The whole family got a say into whether or not he was going to have that surgery. Of course, we all said yes because, right, they told him he was going to die or he was going to end up in diapers for his entire life, right? And that was not my dad. That, right? My dad had a lot of pride, right? But he didn't want it. He had such a mind, and he didn't want that to be gone and still just be existing in that. So, yeah, it's funny when you talk about majority rules, and I remember now that it was majority rules in even that decision on whether or not to have that operation. So it's causing a lot of anxiety to my sister because it's right basically the same operation as what my dad went through. He made it through the operation, but they didn't take him off the. Oh no, they took him off the uh, his blood thinners, and his heart had to work too hard to pump the blood, right? And his heart stopped, and so technically he didn't make it through the operation, even though he did get by for almost a week, right? He was in the hospital. We were supposed to pick him up the next day. He didn't really he didn't really recover in that, and he really knew too because he phoned us the night before, and he says, Cindy, I don't think I'm going to be coming home tomorrow, he said to me. And I just said, yes, you are. We'll be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. We're coming to pick you up. And yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning we got that phone call. So my dad knew, right? My dad knew. It's funny how he knew, but he knew, right? But yeah, we were talking about happy memories, and then there was one. But yeah, right. We're talking about the illnesses, in our family that everybody just struggles with something, but I'm so grateful for my good health, and it's why I wanted to take off 20 pounds. I'm not doing it to look skinny and beautiful and right hit the nightclubs again and find husband number two. It's not why I'm doing that. I'm just doing it so that I can be somebody who can move around without a walker or a cane, or even to be able to be mobile in general, to have a life. Because a lot of people at 80 years old, they're in homes already, right? So I don't want that to be me. If it's going to be me, it's going to be me. But if I put that work in myself, right, to do the very best that I can to make sure that I could have, why my sister made that decision to have that heart bypass, right? And her doctor said, no problem. She's going to fly right through it. They say that operation, 98% people get through it just fine. It's in what you do after the operation that's going to dictate, right? So you want to make sure you quit smoking and you eat well and you don't overexert yourself right away. But when I was doing the research on it, oh, she's going to have at least 18 years, right? If she takes good care of herself. And that's a lot better than the 1 year that they gave her if she didn't have the operation. It wasn't a majority rule, but I'm very grateful that she made the right decision in that, right? Made the right decision, especially at 98% success rate. That's pretty amazing. And that's innovation, right? Because that wasn't the percentage when my dad had his bypass, but his bypass was in the neck. It wasn't in the heart. But that wasn't the case when my father had his operation. Innovation. I trust the hospitals. I trust doctors, and if I had an emergency or if I had an help, I wouldn't have any hesitation, right? Put me out, do what you need to do, and I'll see you when I come through it, right? And that's how I feel about doctors and surgeons and stuff, right? Everybody is a professional. Everybody is an expert in what they're an expert in, right? That's why they go to school for so many years, right? Yeah, it's why we train, and no matter what we do, it's to be the best of the best, right? Okay. Bob Ross. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I was going, Bob. I knew it was Bob something. Bob Ross. He had a great calm voice after being a screaming sergeant during the Vietnam and never yelled again. Is that the story behind that? I didn't know that. My dad liked to watch that Bob Ross show. I think my mother did too. My mother was an artist. It was her dream, I believe, to be an artist. Uh, she still drew and she still painted on occasion. Um, uh, as she became older, but she never pursued it, right? She never pursued her dream in that. But I do remember my sister's got all her artwork. She used to like to do horse scenes, especially. Not so much portraiture, even though she uh, did try to paint me and her when I was a baby, but she did love landscapes and she loved animals, and so she would draw and paint uh, animals, and yeah. All the episodes are free now on YouTube. Really? Yeah, I should actually go in and pay attention to a little bit of content that is outside the topics that I am in. I went in and looked at my suggested. I let YouTube, right, suggest the content to me, and I went into suggestions, and usually it's a really good mix with my metal detecting videos, my bottle digging videos, and my Neolithic, right? And Neanderthals and right, Dragon Man. I love I love history, like going back. And I love discoveries and documentaries. And usually it's a pretty good mix. But yeah, I have been in the lessons because I'm looking at the side screen of what's being suggested to me, and it's all heavy content, especially today. It was all heavy content. I don't think, did I watch? Well, might have watched a little bit of Stealth Diggers or Not Thursday, which is metal detecting videos. But other than that, yeah, it's all been pretty heavy today, right? It felt heavy. It felt like a heavy day. I slept really good. Like I said, I was super tired yesterday. I slept really good. And I woke up in a dream, and I've been remembering my dreams now for about 5 or 6 weeks. Not remembering them clearly, losing them right away. But if I can wake up, I get maybe 20 seconds of something of what I was dreaming about. And if I can remember it, um, then it sticks with me. And what stuck with me this morning was me getting a graft, like I was a big redwood tree, like I was a big redwood tree, and I was getting a little seedling skin graft, like when you're doing hybrid trees and you take a little branch of one tree and you put it against a little cut in another tree and you bind it, and then you end up with different kinds of fruit or a different kind of tree growing out of it. But yeah, it was like I was a great, and I knew it was me because I'm looking at my side and I'm watching this little seedling being strapped around me. But I could tell that I was also one of those great big redwoods, the ones with the trunks that are big as a house, right? And it was a strange dream to wake up to, but I suspect because I had slept so long that I was allowed to go into kind of a dream state, because that dream state happens when you're that half in and half out, because it was time for me to get up hours before and I didn't. It was just a way for me to wake up. And it was neat because it was a reflection for me that my dreams are coming back to me. I haven't dreamed in over, I have to say, 10 years. I haven't had dreams. And if I have had dreams, I've never woken up to remembering what my dreams are. They say everybody dreams because eye movement underneath the eyelids. They say everybody dreams, but I could never remember a dream for the life of me. But it's really neat now to get these little moments of recognition that I have been dreaming, and dreaming quite regularly. Not really remembering the dreams, just maybe a picture or a word or a sentence or a person, but really not the experience. This morning was kind of interesting just because of the topic that it was in my dream. That I was a big, I'm not saying I was a redwood tree, but I was like, just just referencing how big of a tree I actually was. I think I was a big oak tree or something like that, right? Not a redwood tree because the trunks are, I guess, red in that. And for me, it was more like I was a big elm tree because they have those really gnarly trunks, right? And I had a pretty gnarly trunk, but it was pretty neat that I was being grafted with a little seedling, right? I thought that was pretty neat. Um, Yeah, but I didn't know that he was a sergeant. I didn't know that in the Vietnam War, and I didn't know that's why he had such a soft, such a soft voice, right? I know like lots of people referred to him for those ASMR videos, right? But I had no reasoning as to why he spoke that way. Um, I like the metal ones, but I do miss your camp in the forest. Yeah, my brother-in-law lives on that land now, and my sister and him got divorced. He was a narcissist, and right, and you can see the situation that my sister is in right now. She's the one going in for the quad bypass, and yeah, she is super grateful that she managed to get the divorce said and done with, especially when she was in such a scary state. And because she was a millionaire, she didn't want him to have all her money, right? She lost a lot of it. She lost half of it. And she actually lost a lot more because he had a lot of toys that she bought him, fancy trucks and um, ATVs and snowmobiles, and bought him that farm. She bought him that farm too, right? So he got out of it really, really well. And but I'm grateful too that my sister, she's gonna have this operation, she's gonna have all that money, she's gonna travel, and she likes where she's living and everything, and she likes the simplicity of her life, but I'm sure she's gonna do lots of traveling and stuff, and she's gonna be able to enjoy her retirement. Yeah. But yeah, I miss that. It was a big Christmas tree farm, but the trees were big pine trees, and they were, it was just beautiful. It was just beautiful in there. At one time there was nothing on that land. There was homeland, it was big field and stuff, and he had this dream of being an entrepreneur, Christmas tree farmer, and he did it for a while, but it was just him and it was his dream. And those trees got so big. Like where I'm sitting now on the fourth floor, that's where the top of the trees were. His trees got so big. And I just said, well, why don't you just cut the tips of the trees off? Because the tips of the trees look like Christmas trees. And he said, like, how am I going to get up there? And I said, I don't know. Why don't you cut the whole tree down, cut the tip off, and then use the rest of it for firewood, right? Because he had a mobile home on the property too. It was really, oh, it was in bad shape. But I guess he spent some of that money that he got from my sister. And I'm saying he got from my sister because he never worked other than his Christmas tree farm that my sister bought for him. That he was a house husband. He didn't have to do anything. He didn't work, nothing. He mowed the grass and did a repair if there was a repair that needed to be done. Otherwise, he did for himself what he wanted to do. And he actually was a holistic healer. The Hutterite colonies, because they don't do doctors and hospitals and stuff, they would come to the house, and he had a little room and waiting room and a little room put off to the side, and he would have different colonies come to him for alignments in their backs. He even did their animals and stuff. They would bring their animals and their kids and their babies, and yeah, he made good money. He made good money. I mean, they like a good deal, but oh my goodness, he probably made couple $1,000s a week, right? In doing that healing work, holistic healing. And he always like say to my sister when she'd have like heart pains or leg pains or when she started getting sick and they didn't know what it was. And he always said, oh, come downstairs, I'll fix you. He was a narcissist. He really believed in what he was doing. But, you know, the Hutterites and the Mennonites, they believed in what he was doing too, right? So who am I to say? Who am I to say in that? Interesting. Wow, lots of memories today. Um, Dave says, if I recall a few years back, didn't you do a barbecue video on your sister's back deck? De- Oh, yes, there was a party. She had a backyard party. I remember that. It was her birthday. Did I really post that to YouTube? I'll go back and find that. I'll go back. I think it snowed or something. Couldn't have been her birthday because her birthday is in August. Maybe it was her husband's birthday or something because I remember the snow. It was snowing and raining, and we were all in our winter gear. If that's the one you're talking about. Um, or it could have been a summer barbecue. I'm not sure. I'm going to go back into my videos, Dave, and see if I can find that. I'm sure I left it up. I don't delete anything, right? That's that's my video diaries, right? And even though it might not serve me or anybody else in the moment, who's to say? Years down the road when I'm 80, 90 years old, that right? And going back and talking about Bob Ross and going down back alleys that I have a little bit of referencing in my YouTube, especially right in the past half a dozen years and in all the changes that have come into my life specifically, that they've got to be of use, at the very least, entertaining in looking back on those experiences. Yeah, but I'll go back and I'll check those out and see if I can find that. It's going back a ways, so it shouldn't be uh, too bad because at that time I wasn't posting as much as I post now. But yeah, I'm gonna go back and check those out. I've actually pulled out all my hard drives. I got my memory sticks here and my memory card. So we're gonna put some of those memories and some of those explores and stuff that where the video was too bad that I couldn't use it. I have lots of explores, lots of abandoned farms and stuff when I was starting out, but I didn't understand about putting narrative or music over the wind and stuff like that. And what I would do is I would just cut those videos right out to nothing. And right, I thought maybe we kind of put maybe a little series together of my experience on YouTube because it has been an experience being a part of that YouTube community. I've pivoted so many times, right? I've changed so many times. My content has changed so many times. And the only thing that hasn't changed are my amazing people who've been hanging out with me all those years. Man, Dave, that's really, really going back. You've been with me for a long time, haven't you? Thank you so much. So appreciated. Okay, enough of that yibber yabbering. We're going to pull a card. We're just going to go into it for a few minutes. If you've never hung out with me before, I have a deck here. There's 56 cards, 54 powerful words. There are two words. The word acceptance and the word believe are in there twice, only because each word I worked on in my live shows for a year. Um, each word I spent every night looking at it in a different way, in a different perspective, and sharing it with my audience. So it took me over a year to get this deck of cards done. And then I still haven't manufactured it or put them into production or anything. But they're only powerful words. That's all they are. And that's when I say that's all they are, they're much more than that. They're very pertinent, powerful words to my life. And I think should be pertinent words to other people's lives. And that's why I did my deck. It's my own little version of tarot cards, but they're not tarot cards. I'm not a fortune teller. Though sometimes I like to think that I am in the serendipities that come into my life. But in all honesty, a powerful word. Each time I grab the card, it is in a different perspective. So let's just pull a card here. And this card tonight, we're just going to go in for a couple of minutes. Oh, and I pulled two cards. So we're going to take the top card, and the top card is the word vision. Didn't we get a little bit of vision tonight, Dave? You know, in looking back at the memories of our childhood and our teenage years and in those experiences. I know vision lots of times you reference it as to something in the future, but vision definitely can be a word that's pertinent to our past, right? It's only bringing a picture to our mind, right? It is in an experience, and whether that experience is in our present or in our past. I'm just taking out a notification here. If it's a vision of our present or our past, it's still pertinent in our lives. What did I write here? Vision is the potential that has not yet been realized. This is what I've written here. So when I said that just now, that it could be from the past or the present, when I wrote it on the card, right? I wrote it as if it was for the future, right? Having a vision for the future, kind of like what Elon Musk does, right? You know, he has a dream and he has a vision, and then he just puts that action into it, and he realizes it, right? He realizes it, even though that possibility of a risk that it wouldn't manifest into what he dreamed or visioned it to be, right? And I guess if you look at that vision, like me and Dave were talking about, in that vision of the past, right? In that memories of the past, that also is a vision. But you can look at those memories of the past, and I do it all the time in the work that I'm doing in understanding emotions, right? um, that it does give us visions for the future. It gives us sometimes resolutions or answers, right? So that's kind of neat that I looked at it and referenced it in a different way today, not just in the card, in giving a perspective in the card, but in me and Dave here, right? Drumming up a little bit of memory, right? A little bit of memory of our past, and it was kind of enjoyable, right? Because I remember my childhood years going up and down the back alleys and right plucking fruit from the trees that were hanging over the fences because that was fair game, or picking up the fruit that had ripened so much and just looking for the fruit that wasn't bruised yet or broken open, right? Or overripe. But for me, I liked overripe fruit. Except for apples. I didn't like overripe apples, but overripe plums, overripe pears, overripe peaches, right? Berries always in season, right? Always in season. But yeah, that was a good one. Vision, right? It's a great word. Vision is the potential that has not yet been realized. That's not the way that I looked at it tonight, but you know what? That's okay because it was looking at something in a way that I had never looked at it before. And that's important to do too because there are answers and there are revelations and there are problems that we can resolve right now. Kind of like what we were talking about, right? In that vision, my father, right? would never vision that my sister would be able to have a quadruple heart bypass, right? 40 years after he passed away. He would never believe that anybody would be able to get through something like that. And the doctors and the surgeons say 98%. That's almost a guarantee. I am her cheerleader in this moment. I'm her right pep talk, and I'm going to keep her optimistic through the whole process. And when she's said and done, right, we're going to get her healthy and on her feet as fast as we can. She'll come swimming with me. Maybe she won't do 40 laps in the Olympic sized pool, but right, she can dangle her feet over the edge and feel like she's got her life back. And that's important. Okay, you guys, I think that's going to be it for tonight. Last couple of comments. Dave says, if I recall a few years back, didn't you do the barbecue? Yes, and I answered that one. I think it was summer. You make us all smile. Aw, thank you. Thank you. That was sweet of you, Dave. Thank you so much for coming in and drumming up all those good memories. All my good memories. You really drum them up tonight. You're really sending me off to bed tonight feeling good, right? Feeling optimistic that tomorrow's another day. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.